Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to kick off this presentation with a focus on timeless wisdom from the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. On this first slide, we see a powerful hadith narrated by Abu Huraira, may Allah be pleased with him. It emphasizes the importance of following divine guidance, staying away from what is forbidden, and doing as much of what is ordered as we can. It also reminds us of the consequences faced by previous communities due to excessive questioning and disagreements with their prophets. Over the course of this presentation, we'll explore these teachings further and discuss how they can impact our lives today. Let's take a closer look at the nature of prohibition, specifically focusing on the word nahi. As you can see, it's translated here as forbidden, but what's interesting is that it actually carries two different implications. The first is a strict or complete prohibition of an act, meaning that it is completely forbidden to do. This is what we call al-tahrim, which makes something haram or impermissible. The second implication is more of a recommendation. It's about avoiding an act because we dislike it or see it as undesirable. This is known as al-karaha, which means the act is discouraged or disliked, but not outright forbidden. To put it simply, when something is prohibited, it's not just a suggestion to stay away, it's a clear command. And understanding these nuances helps us grasp why certain acts are categorized differently in Islamic teachings. The phrase, "What I have forbidden you, stay away from," neatly summarizes the importance of adhering to these prohibitions and highlights the overall theme of obedience and conscious choice in our faith. Recognizing the difference between what is totally forbidden and what is simply discouraged helps us navigate our actions more thoughtfully and in accordance with divine guidance. This slide emphasizes the distinction between acts that are strictly forbidden and those that are disliked. The most apparent meaning of this hadith is about what is clearly prohibited, not just disliked. For example, acts like adultery, fornication, drinking alcohol, taking interest, stealing, and murder are all strictly forbidden. It's important to understand that we are expected to do our best to avoid these acts under all circumstances, because they carry serious consequences. On the other hand, disliked acts, while not encouraged, don't carry the same weight of sin if committed occasionally or without necessity. Even if there's no urgent reason, a Muslim might sometimes perform these disliked acts, but they should be avoided whenever possible. The core message here is, "What I have forbidden you, stay away from." That's a clear instruction to steer clear of the forbidden acts altogether. This aligns with the overall theme of striving to follow Allah's guidance diligently, understanding that avoiding the clearly forbidden is a fundamental part of our faith and obedience. As we continue, it's important to understand that those who truly seek a higher level of taqwa and closeness to Allah make a conscious effort to avoid certain acts. These acts might seem minor, but they can affect our spiritual state. For example, avoiding eating raw onions or garlic before attending the congregational prayer is not just about personal preference. It's about maintaining purity and focus during worship. The idea here is that we should stay away from anything that might distract us or diminish our spiritual presence. Remember, Allah's command is clear. "What I have forbidden you, stay away from." This emphasizes the importance of adhering strictly to what is halal and avoiding anything that could hinder our connection with Him. Ultimately, this is about protecting our hearts and enhancing our taqwa, aligning our actions with our desire to grow closer to Allah. Let's explore the concept of order a bit more deeply. Similar to the word prohibition, the term order actually has two different levels or meanings. The first one is when someone is instructed or commanded to do something, and under normal circumstances, they are expected to obey. This type of order is called ijab, and it makes the act obligatory, meaning it becomes a duty to perform that act. The second type of order is a bit less strict. It's more like a recommendation or suggestion to do a certain act. This is called nadab, and it simply means that the act is recommended but not obligatory. To put it simply, if I say, "What I have ordered you to do, do as much of it as you can," I'm emphasizing that some orders are obligatory, while others are more like advice or encouragement. Recognizing the difference between these two levels helps us understand how commands are given and followed in different contexts, and it ties back to our overall theme of understanding the nature of order in our learning and practice. Let's talk about the different types of acts in our faith. The obligatory acts, such as prayers, zakat, fasting, and fulfilling oaths and promises, are essential duties that we must strive to perform to the best of our ability. It's important to understand that if we fail to fulfill these obligations, generally, it is considered a sin. These acts are the foundation of our spiritual responsibility. On the other hand, there are recommended acts, like performing sunnah prayers or spending for good causes. These are voluntary and encouraged. Doing them brings Allah's pleasure and earns us rewards. However, if we miss out on these occasionally, there's no sin involved. A key point to remember is the guiding principle from the Prophet, peace be upon him. What I have ordered you to do as much of it as you can. This reminds us that Allah values our sincere efforts and intentions. Overall, fulfilling obligatory acts is mandatory, while recommended acts are a means to earn additional reward and closeness to Allah. Striving to do what we can, within our capacity, is the essence of our faith journey. This slide highlights a fundamental legal maxim that is often referenced by jurists. It's directly derived from a hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him. What this means is that when the Prophet, peace be upon him, instructed Muslims, he emphasized that they should do what is within their ability to accomplish. Basically, if he commands something, it's understood that believers should try to fulfill it to the best of their capacity. However, an important point to remember is that some acts might be beyond a person's ability at a given time. This principle clarifies that just because someone cannot do something, it doesn't mean they are excused from the obligation entirely. Instead, the key takeaway is that what one can perform is what matters, and inability to do more doesn't absolve responsibility. This connects to the overall theme of balancing duty with realistic capacity. It reminds us that Islamic law considers human limitations and encourages effort within one's means. So, the core idea is, what one can perform is not excused because of what one cannot perform. This ensures fairness and compassion in applying religious and legal duties. Certainly, here is the word-by-word narrative script for slide 8 of 12. Every command or prohibition has its importance. However, scholars have noted how, in this hadith, the Prophet peace be upon him spoke about orders and prohibitions in a completely different manner. In one case, the case of prohibitions, he told Muslims to stay away from them completely. In the other case, the case of orders, he told Muslims to perform as much of them as he could. This difference in his speech is quite significant and has been discussed in detail by scholars. Understanding this distinction helps us grasp the relative importance of acts of obedience and avoidance in our faith. It emphasizes that avoiding what is forbidden is crucial, but actively striving to perform good deeds is even more encouraged. This insight connects to our overall goal of balancing our efforts in worship and righteousness, always seeking to deepen our understanding and practice of Islamic teachings. As we look at this slide, I want to emphasize that not all questioning is bad, as was demonstrated in the Hadith of Jibril. The angel Jibril came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and asked important and beneficial questions. These questions serve a purpose. They help us understand and practice our religion correctly. In fact, some questions are considered fardain, meaning they are an individual obligation. For example, questions about how to pray or fast are essential for us to fulfill our religious duties properly. So, when we interpret this part of the Hadith, it's crucial to understand what types of questions are being referred to. Not all questions lead to confusion or unnecessary doubt. Some are necessary for our spiritual growth and understanding. The quote here, "Verily, the people before you were destroyed only because of their excessive questioning," highlights the importance of moderation. Excessive questioning, especially when it leads to doubt or confusion, can be problematic. But asking the right questions, those that clarify and strengthen our faith, is beneficial. This connects to the overall theme of our presentation, which is about seeking knowledge in a balanced and purposeful way. Asking the right questions can help us deepen our faith, but we should also be mindful not to fall into unnecessary doubt or over-questioning. In this slide, we see an important principle regarding questions that are not necessary or productive. The prohibition or censure mentioned here specifically relates to questions that don't require answers, like hypothetical questions, questions asked just for fun or ridicule, or questions driven by stubbornness. These types of questions are considered inappropriate because they don't serve a constructive purpose. Historically, these questions were posed by hypocrites, disbelievers, and those whose hearts were diseased during the Prophet's time, and unfortunately, this remains true today. The key point is that engaging with such questions can lead us astray or waste our time. We also see a powerful reminder from the statement, "Verily, the people before you were destroyed only because of their excessive questioning." This highlights how overindulgence in pointless questions can have serious consequences, both in history and in our present lives. Connecting this to our overall theme, it's about focusing on what truly benefits us, asking questions that lead to understanding and growth, rather than wasting effort on questions that serve no real purpose or cause harm. It's a call for wisdom in our curiosity and a reminder to avoid unnecessary or harmful questioning. As Ibn Rajah emphasizes, everything a Muslim needs is clearly laid out in the Quran and Sunnah. The guidance is there in a straightforward way, so we shouldn't get caught up in overly theoretical questions. Instead, our main focus should be turning to these sources, studying them, understanding their messages, and applying what we learn to our daily lives. This is really the correct approach. The key is to prioritize understanding and practice rather than worrying about hypothetical situations that may never actually occur. Because in reality, those scenarios might never come up, and our time and energy are better spent grounding ourselves in the core teachings. So remember, the most important thing is to learn and live by what the Quran and Sunnah tell us. Now, let's discuss some important principles from this slide. First, if something is prohibited, we must stay away from it completely. The only exception to this rule is in true cases of necessity. When something is truly necessary, an act that might normally be prohibited can become permissible. Next, when something is ordered, we should do our best to perform it. Of course, it's not always possible to do everything perfectly or to the highest standard, but we should strive for excellence within our capacity. This is why the Prophet, peace be upon him, emphasized different tones when addressing prohibitions versus orders, highlighting the importance of understanding the nature of each. Another key point is about asking questions. While seeking clarity is good, asking too many questions beyond what is needed, and without a genuine intention to apply the knowledge, can be blameworthy. In fact, this was one of the reasons that previous communities faced destruction. They overcomplicated matters or doubted what was clear. Similarly, opposing prophets or their messages is completely blameworthy. Instead of accepting and submitting, some people resisted what their prophets conveyed, which ultimately led to their downfall. To sum up, these points remind us to be mindful of the boundaries set by Allah, to act sincerely and with effort, and to accept guidance with humility. When we follow these principles, we stay on the right path and avoid unnecessary pitfalls.